Hi, Miriam, and thank you so much for joining me today. We're talking about catapulting your career ashore, and we want to talk about the emotional challenges that can come along with any transition in your career. And so I invited you here to speak. Please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, and then let's just dive right into this.
Sure. Yeah. So Miriam Anthony, I'm a maritime therapist. I sailed for 15 years, still sail a little bit. I'm getting on the Bear this summer as a therapist, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I see all kinds of clients. I see couples, I see adults, but I love seeing mariners. So it's really fun to see mariners and help them work through their challenges. So not only do I help mariners with their career changes, but I've done one myself. So it's kind of cool to be able to share my experience with them when we are connecting.
Great. So I have also gone through a transition ashore from a career at sea, and it feels overwhelming. Sometimes it's huge. Sometimes there's fear. Sometimes there's excitement, like the whole gamut of emotions. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that, about what you've experienced in your own transition ashore, and then also what you see just in general. And so can you kind of talk us through a little bit about that and even what it feels like to kind of lose your identity maybe, because some people really think that their career is who they are. So can we talk a
Mhm.
little bit about all those things?
Yeah, that's a very palpable feeling, and I've definitely gone through that myself with my career change. It's really scary, changing careers, especially. I feel like the longer you're in it, the harder it can be. And we also, you and I went to school for a long time for this too, so we have like a lot of time and energy invested in this. So yeah, the career change is it's really scary. Fear, loss of identity, feelings of guilt, feelings of grief, stress, anxiety, depression, like all the feelings are gonna hit you. So I think I felt all of those, and I still feel them sometimes. Like self doubt can creep in, and you're like, do I want to go back to sea? Would I be happier? And you gotta no. This is what I want to do. This is it. This fits with my values. So yeah. So to start off, fear is such a strong one. It's really scary changing careers. Everyone in every industry probably feels the fear, but I hear it a lot with maritime because it's just so different. Nothing is like maritime, right? You have this very specific set of skills and understanding and knowledge. And so you're like, what can I do that's not this, right? So it's good to ask yourself, like, what am I afraid is going to happen? Like, what's the worst that could happen if I did shift careers? A lot of us are really lucky. We have, a lot of options in the maritime industry. So it's good to kind of address, like, what am I really afraid of? And what are you afraid you're going to lose? And then ask yourself, is that accurate? Am I really going to lose that? Is it possible to take that with me in my career change? So you can address your fears, but you definitely need to, like, okay, I am feeling this feeling. I am having, experiencing some fear. So how can we kind of like take that and harness it, right? Because it's a lot of energy, and fear could actually be very informing. You kind of learn about yourself when you're like, oh, okay, I'm afraid of this, like I'm afraid of commitment, I'm afraid of change. So like, I feel like a lot of mariners, like we're very kind of fluid in our careers. So yeah, change can be really scary. But then you also want to ask yourself, what do you have to gain? Is it experience? Is it time with your family? Is it new opportunities? A newer, better identity? Like you can actually gain a lot from a career change. So it doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. It can be really exciting and awesome. So that's, I'm going to kind of hit the bullet points for these. And, if we were working with my clients, obviously we would like dig deeper and like go more into it. But we'll graze the surface of these different emotions that'll come up. So you mentioned loss of identity. Oh, Christine, I still consider myself a sailor, and there are times when I'm out and about and I'll introduce myself as a therapist, and there's times I'll introduce myself as a mariner, because I very much feel like that is part of my identity. It's my experience for so many years. It's one of the things that makes me cool, like I love introducing myself. People are like, what, you're a mariner? You work on ships? Like, are you in the Navy? What's happening? Like, it's so fun to kind of introduce yourself and introduce people to like a new way of being. Because oftentimes I find that I'm the first mariner that someone's met, so it's cool. It's a neat identity. That's hard to let go of. I'm not sure that you necessarily have to let go of that, aspect of your life. You don't have to be, oh, I used to be a sailor. You can still be a sailor. You can still be an engineer. You can still be a person of the sea, a mariner. There is a fear that you're going to lose that, and that's
Right.
understandable. It's something you can still work through. As with career changes, the whole point of our identity is like people respect it, right? It gives us a sense of self-worth. And so you want to make sure that whatever career path you choose beyond sailing, beyond working on the sea, is also going to give you that self-worth. It's also going to help you feel respected. Like you don't want to like make a career change where you're like, this sucks, Even if it's going ashore to become a mom,
Right.
that's there's so much self-worth that you can find in that position, in that role, right?
Right.
And respected, hopefully. I have a lot of respect for moms that come ashore. So I mean, for you, like encouraging women to get into the maritime industry, like I find that too to be very rewarding. I work with cadets now, and it's extremely rewarding. I don't know if I'm respected, but when they find out that I'm a mariner, they're like, "Oh, you went to Cal Maritime? Oh, you sailed? Okay." And I noticed like a little change in a shift in their perspective. So
Right.
you can carry those values with you and that experience. No one can take that experience away from you. So it's important to remember that your identity is you are who you are. Just because you change careers doesn't mean that you change as a person or that you're losing a part of yourself. So it doesn't. If you could use a little reframe, call me. There's this term called encore career. And I love it because it's the idea basically that you're going to be leveraging your skills from your ship career to your new career, to your new way of life, to your passions.
Yeah.
You get to bring all your experiences with you. So I don't know. I love that idea of an encore career. It's so common now. Across industries, it's very rare to find somebody who stayed in the same industry or the same job their whole life.
Right.
So I mentioned guilt, and I've noticed guilt come up with a lot of colleagues of mine who have changed careers or who are considering changing careers. One is they're guilted into changing careers because
Yes.
of like family obligations, because of personal obligations. They feel like, for others. And then the other side of that is guilt of leaving a job.
Mhm.
I never personally felt this because I've shifted ships all the time. And like, I did tugboats and I did, big ships and I did research vessels. And so I like hopped around a lot. I never really felt like an obligation to a company, but I have really close friends who worked for companies and they're like, I can't leave my company. They sent me to training. They, supported me through a divorce. They call me in my time off and check up on me like they're family. And
Yes.
so they feel they have all these feelings of guilt about leaving. So guilt can show up in a lot of different ways. And depending on your relationship with guilt, you can actually kind of like be re-guilted. Like, let's say you had an experience in the past where you felt guilty. And then this, like a career change can actually like trigger those feelings. I mean, it can trigger all kinds of feelings to come up, but that's one of them too. Anyway, but I would like to address that though, because I feel like this is a time in your life, a career change is a time, and it's okay for you to be selfish. It's okay for you to focus on what's right for you, what's going to be right for you and your family, if it's a family choice. If you're unhappy and depressed and this career change isn't working for you, it's not going to reflect well on the rest of your life and the other people in your life. So it's really important that you make the choice for yourself and not for others, not for your company. They'll understand. I feel like there's ways to kind of navigate a career change and mitigate your feelings of guilt. I hope that there is. There
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
be. Yeah. I saw you nodding your head. Were you thinking that you had some of those feelings when you
Well,
did
for
your
sure. Yeah. I think that we also have told people for so long that we love going to sea, right? I
Mhm.
remember like having to give that affirmation of I enjoy my job and and I like this lifestyle. And then when I transitioned to a shoreside job, I had to I felt very like almost ashamed to have to tell people like, yeah, I really did enjoy my time, but now it's a new season. And
Mm-hmm.
so it felt a little bit false at some points of it, where I had for 10 years I had been saying one thing, and now all of a sudden I'm having to like change my narrative a little bit. And of course no one was going to blame me for the decisions I made, but it was this personal guilt of feeling that I wasn't being honest with everyone around me,
Yeah.
which, it was all self-imposed. And so, but I think that we do that to ourselves. We think about who's going to think something is going on, right? We just, instead of just being
Yeah.
like, I have to do the right thing for me, and this is the best decision, and I have weighed all my options and thought about it, and I've talked to my network of people and my mentors, and this is
Mhm.
what I need to do. And so
Yeah.
there's
It's so
definitely a
funny
lot of that.
how many people take it personally when you
Yes.
change careers. They're like, why? What's wrong? What happened? And like I have to say, like, my dad was like, what are you doing? Why would you become a therapist? Like, you have this great career on ships. I think he was living vicariously through me, and like was giving me so much shit about it. And I'm like, Dad, this is what I want to do. Like, this is going to be really awesome. I'm not gonna, yes, I did love sailing. I wasn't making that up. That was a really great career, and I can always go back to it. It's not going anywhere, but yeah, it's really funny how some people were like, why, what happened? Like, I thought you really loved it. And it's like, I did love it. I also love this new career. And yeah, it's so funny. And I don't know, I guess the lesson is to not let other people impose their own beliefs and their own feelings of it. Like, it's not about them, right? It's about you and what you want. It's so funny. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's my dad right there. He since has like accepted my new career and thinks it's cool, but there was definitely he had to have his own transition period when I changed careers, his own identity crisis.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Grief. I
Oh,
feel like that was a big one for me, and it's probably tied to identity. But I feel like, some people transition for reasons outside their control.
right.
They might get fired. They might have medical issues.
Yep.
They might have a partner who died, and now they have to come home and take care of the kids. I've got a buddy who was sailing chief mate, and I got a call from him saying, I'm changing. I got to come shoreside. My ex-girlfriend, like, we have a kid, and she got into all these drugs, and she can't take care of the kid, and I've got to take care of him now. And I was like, okay, here we go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure out where you're going to go. And he was accessing all his networks and doing all the right steps to kind of figure out what was going to be a good fit for him. But I think he really had to grieve too, because he'd put so much effort into getting where he was, and now suddenly he was like just kind of thrown into this. He didn't really have a lot of time to prepare. So definitely grieving. So anyway, there's lots of reasons. Like, there's great reasons, even good reasons to leave a career can leave you feeling some grief, right? I
Yeah.
mean, new moms get depressed sometimes, and it's not because they don't want to be moms. It's because they're grieving this life that they had before kids, right? It was different.
Right.
So it's okay to grieve, the loss of not the loss, but I mean, yes, you can grieve the loss of, a past life. You can grieve the loss of a job. You can also grieve like closing of a chapter, like you said earlier, like, this is my new chapter. It's okay that I'm sad about leaving my last chapter. And there's this new chapter to be excited about. But grief is something, people think that they can just skip grief, whether it's grieving the loss of a person, a parent, a partner, or a job. They think they can just kind of skip the grief, which you can, but I'll tell you that it oftentimes will resurface and come up. So it's really important to at least address your grief, identify it, and then you can process it and move on. It doesn't have to be a long drawn out. You don't have to sit at home and cry. It's like, it can be whatever you need it to be. But I've never met anybody who can just kind of like, oh, I had grief, and move on the next day. So it's something to kind of give yourself a little bit of time to figure out how you need to grieve. That said, you may not need to grieve your job, changing careers. Like, this might be a a step that you can skip. But if there is something to grieve there, it does need to be addressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
If it comes up, address it. If it's not coming up, if you're like, forget that job, I hated it anyway, I have trauma, whatever, then you can skip grieving and just embrace the new chapter. So,
Yeah.
but it's good. It's important, I think, to allow yourself to grieve if that's something that you need to do, because, I had this weird experience. I was moving out of my parents' house. Luckily it was a long time ago, but I was moving out of their house and I boxed up all my things. And I was like walking out of my childhood bedroom and I was like, why am I so upset right now? I had to like sit down and cry because it was just like the ending of an era. I'm never going to live with my parents again. This is kind of sad. It's exciting. I want to move out. Like there's nothing that's I don't want to stay here, but it is like, oh yeah, that was a really nice period in my life, and so sometimes it can just pop up and when you don't least expect it, and just allow yourself to feel the feelings if you can.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah.
So what other advice do you have for us that are going through a transition?
Yeah. Okay. So what you can do to kind of like manage your emotions if you're changing careers or changing your role, research new roles, get a career coach or a mentor if you can, if you feel like it's not, if you're having trouble finding a job, or if you're having trouble figuring out what you want your change to be, a mentor or a career coach can be really helpful. Build your connections and your network. Get on Facebook, get on LinkedIn, reach out to your old classmates, just like reach out to your friends that work ashore, and just try to figure out like what, get everyone kind of on board. Like, hey, I'm like considering what to do ashore. Think about what you're really passionate about and use your passion as like your personal compass to find career options. For me, I love people. I love talking to people. I found that like when I was on the ship, people would come to me and talk about their problems. And I was like, oh, let's figure it out. And so like shifting to a therapist just seemed like a good shift for me. I also really wanted to work for myself. So, figure out what you're really passionate about and what kind of lifestyle you want to have. Ask yourself, like, what's possible, right? Like what amazing things are around the corner for me. Try to get yourself pumped and excited about something different and new. Like a new career could be an adventure. I think for me, like adventure was one of my values that like guided me into sailing, and also getting out of it. I was like, how can I get out of sailing and still have adventure in my life?
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't want the adventure to stop. This is important. So for me, it was like adventure and joy and kindness and connection. Those were the values that like really, I was like, okay, these are going to come with me. I'm bringing them with me into my next career. So yeah, ask yourself, what are the values I want to bring with me and how I want to live my life? A good question to ask yourself is, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? Right. So back to that fear of the change. Like what, if let's say I wasn't afraid, like hypothetically, magically wasn't afraid. What would I do? And then I read somewhere that imagine yourself as like a 90-year-old, and then like write yourself a letter from your 90-year-old self saying like, these are all the things that you did in your life. Like these are your professional achievements, and think of like, what would you want to be reflecting on, right? Like on your life, if you were to change careers, if you were to start a new job. So, everybody has like, we all have our own like unique experiences. We all had to overcome obstacles to do. It's hard working at sea, like you don't go to sea if you're not a badass. Like, you know what I mean? Like I haven't met anyone at sea who didn't like have some really cool story about how they got there and how they like made it work, because it's challenging. So that is something to take with you and to kind of honor in yourself as you're figuring out what you want to do next. Be like, I'm a badass. I had to overcome all these obstacles to get to where I am in my current career, and I got all these really cool skills from it, right?
Yeah. You
have to work with the craziest people on ships. And I was like, okay, I can work with crazy people. Not that my clients are crazy, but it does kind of like you build up these skills, people skills, management skills, engineering. If you're an engineer, you have all these problem solving skills. So it's like really cool to kind of reflect on your career and like the skills that you're going to bring with you. Again, you're like it's kind of like your identity. You can take it with you. It doesn't mean just because you're not going to sea doesn't mean you're no longer an engineer, right?
Right.
So bring your unique experiences with you. Oh, I wrote myself a note that what's your superpower, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we all kind of have a superpower that helps us slay it when we're on ships,
Yeah.
So it's good to think about that and definitely take that with you. And then those things are all going to come up when you're, in the process of interviewing, if you're going to be going to work somewhere else, or if you're, going to write a book, or if you're going to, whatever you're going to do, like it's really important to be able to talk yourself up.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to do that as a mariner. I had a resume that had all the ships I was on, and you didn't really need to pass an interview as long as you had the license, right? Or like the experience they were looking for. And so I had to kind of like learn how to do an interview, and like learn how to promote yourself and how to talk about your strengths and stuff. So that's definitely something to think about. You want to be able to tap into your superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's such a good advice, because I think that we all assume that we're all just alike, right? Since we all have the same license, we must have all the same talents. And that's not true until we really start to evaluate what we have personally. And then I think when you're so close to yourself, right, and you don't ever think that what you have is special, you just assume that everyone has the same traits that you have until you have to get out there and experience it. And you're like, whoa, like my time management skills are actually really good, or whatever it is, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Time management, work ethic.
Yeah.
When I go to Burning Man, and I'm part of this like team, like a build team.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's your first time. Like you're gonna, you're screwed. And I came in with like my like sailor work ethic, and they were like, dang, you're a really hard worker. Like you show up and like are ready to solve problems. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't know. I think it's from sailing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how I don't know if we give ourselves enough credit for the skills and like the strengths that we pick up along the way.
For sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Miriam, thank
Yeah.
you so much for talking us through some of the emotional side of transitioning ashore. It's not easy. It's going to look different for everyone. And so if you're not experiencing grief, that's fine. If you are struggling with that, it's okay too. It's just a part of the process. And we're here to talk to you. You can always reach out to me. I can put you in touch with Miriam if you need to talk to a licensed therapist and get some advice from her. So thank you so much, Miriam, for being here with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Christine.